Even when the knowledge you gain is completely true and unmixed with error, there's another very serious danger about gaining wisdom and knowledge that we need to be aware of, and that is hearing and not doing. James warns us against that in James chapter 1, verse 22, where he says, "Be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he's like a man observing his natural face in a mirror. For he observes himself, goes away, and immediately forgets what kind of man he was. But he who looks into the perfect law of liberty and continues in it, and is not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this one will be blessed in what he does." The whole book of James, there's a huge emphasis on putting into action what we know. And this is a danger of gaining information, because if we don't put it into action, it's not doing us any good. And in fact, we're deceiving ourselves if we think that we have gained something by adding one more bit of information into our brains, but it's not anything that we're going to act on. We filled the little slot in your memory bank, but you haven't actually improved your life. And so it's in taking action, taking in information that we can take action on, and then actually taking the action that gives us value. And that's true in any aspect of our lives. But when it comes to spiritual things, it's especially important, because here he's talking about looking into the perfect law of liberty. This is God's instructions. This is God's wisdom. This is knowledge that we need to be righteous before God. And so if we're deceiving ourselves into saying, I know 10 times as much about the Bible as I knew 10 years ago, I suppose that might be good. But if you are doing no more of what God's will is than you were 10 years ago, can you see how you're heaping guilt on yourself? Because more about what God's will is, but you aren't doing any more of it. And so you're deceiving yourself. Jesus puts this in even more stark terms in Matthew chapter 7, verse 26 and 27. He says, "He who hears these sayings of mine and does not do them, he will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain descended, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it fell, and great was its fall." Jesus used that illustration at the end of the Sermon on the Mount. There's a lot of challenging statements of God's wisdom in the Sermon on the Mount. And let's say we just memorized the Sermon on the Mount. Oh, I've learned the Sermon on the Mount. No, you haven't learned the Sermon on the Mount until you learn how to put those very challenging teachings of Jesus Christ into practice in your life. If you do that, you've built a foundation under your life of not Jesus' words, but knowledge of how to carry out Jesus' words.